Live.
Hey everybody, how you doing? We got Ketan Patel in the house. How's it going, buddy?
Yeah, not too bad. Very good, very good. We're
Good.
doing a bit of a late session today, but yeah, very good.
So talk to me. How's your day been?
My day's been really it's been normal. Just looking for jobs in the morning. Nothing exciting that I've been up to. Really, just just looking. Yeah, so I've just been really looking for jobs and really preparing for what we're going to be talking about tonight. So yeah, I'm sure you've got more exciting news to tell me than myself. You've been playing around with Instagram, haven't you?
I have. Yes, I have. Yes, I've uploaded a couple of videos onto Instagram. I've only some short clips just to kind of give the viewers a little kind of insight into my world. And I just felt like it was really appropriate just to kind of open up a little bit more beyond just the webcast. But my day's been interesting. It's been pretty hectic actually. I've been out most of the day. I've just come back from central London, which is about an hour's journey by public transport from my location here at the moment. And if you're wondering, why don't I just drive to central London? Because there's nowhere to park. So it's all about taking the tube. But beyond that, it's been an interesting day. I went to the gym.
Great.
As you can tell, I had a shave.
Yeah.
I know you're probably thinking, who is this werewolf in my house? So I've taken all that into consideration and I've decided to fix up a little bit. So you mentioned the job search. How's that going, and what sort of challenges are you facing at the moment?
Yeah, so with the job searching, because of the industry I'm trying to career change and move into, which again I've mentioned in previous episodes, is really cybersecurity. So I've got a few leads. I've got agencies ringing me. So I'm just really waiting for interviews. So I'm told that they've liked my CV. Just really working with the hiring manager and getting those particular interviews set up. And also challenges being faced. The market is slowly coming up now. It was quite quiet over January and February, so I'm optimistic now. It's coming more buoyant. Recruitment agencies are saying they're getting more jobs coming through.
Okay.
So touch wood, fingers crossed. I will nail a job. But yeah, no, I've got an interview hopefully next week. So I'm working for a international bank. So I'm looking forward to that interview because it's a wonderful job that I applied for, and I do hope I get it. So, but I'm fairly sure I'm going to be up against people who've got years and years of experience within that industry. So I hope my other skill set shines through during that interview.
Agreed. And I think we've spoken on a few occasions that it's all about the mindset. See it, or is it believe it, see it, achieve it, something along those lines. But as you mentioned, the marketplace right now, certainly within the corporate world, is very, very, very competitive right now. So for the people listening, I'm also in the same position as KP. I'm not officially working. My situation is slightly different in the fact that I left the corporate world. I think it was autumn of last year, and I decided to pursue a career in acting. So what I've been doing effectively. I saved up some money, perhaps not as much funds as I should have, but it is what it is. And I've been taking classes twice a week, and really trying to kind of organize my mind and my schedule, in so much as really focusing on a career more than just kind of a regular 9 to 5 type of job. But as you can probably understand, that moving from one direction quite drastically into another direction, it can be quite an ordeal. But thankfully for me, I don't have any dependents, so I'm pretty fortunate like that. Yes, I do have rent to pay, I've got bills to pay, but in terms of family, I don't have any family that or people that actually have to depend on me. So I can breathe a little bit easier, but nevertheless, it's still a challenge, because I think most people want to have or need a structure to at least work with. And so sometimes we start to panic when we don't know how we're going to pay these bills that keep coming in. So, you know, I'm not the first person that's gone through this, and I certainly won't be the last person that goes through this. But yeah, it's been an interesting week here in Britain, and I'm sure across the world. So if you don't know, you better get to know. The undisputed issues between Russia and Great Britain continues. It's very interesting because it's almost like the Cold War all over again, you know, but it's sort of unspoken. So we have a situation here where a double agent by the name of Sergei Skripal, I don't know, I'm probably butchering his name, basically was poisoned, him and his daughter. And the British authorities want to know more about the substance that was used against this particular Russian double agent. So double agent simply means, I know it sounds quite straightforward, but of course some people might not know, but a double agent is an individual entity that works for two parties. So it seems in this case he perhaps works for well, I'm sure he does, he works for the Russian government, the Kremlin, and he may also be working for the British government. So unfortunately, it seems that him and his daughter have found themselves in a situation where unfortunately they've been poisoned, and it seems like their situation is quite critical. When I first came across the story, I was intrigued, but this is actually not the first time, certainly on this soil, that this type of situation has happened. About 10, 15 years ago, another Russian was poisoned. What's his name? Emelianenko? I can't remember. But he was also poisoned, and unfortunately he died while in hospital. But I guess we don't really know about sort of the shadowed world, the sort of the underbelly of so-called democracy. KP, what was your thoughts when you read about this story?
Really, it's again the Russian, you know, really getting involved in when it comes to agents that are, you know, that have double crossed Russia, right? So you know, spies that have both been double agents, you know, as you described, like, you know, working for the MI6 and also working for the Russian, you know, government as well. And so really is, you know, what is really happening here is that the Russians are trying to silence these particular individuals, right? Because they know a lot of information and sensitive information, and they don't want they want that to be put down, because really that is because as you know, Russia can be aggressive in certain areas. They have an influence across the world. They are a superpower, you know, and they have got influence, and they have got means of really trying to influence as you know, there's been stories about Russia having influence in the U.S. politics for Trump's, becoming the president with fake news and so forth, and also over here when it comes to security with the UK. As you described earlier, there's an agent that died 10 years previously. And again, they're now trying to really silence these perpetrators that they believe who have caused harm to their country, and they really want to put them down. And they're using agents they're using these chemicals or these. So, like you say, it was a nerve agent, that was used, and that is dangerous because basically what happened is I think another police officer at the time who saw the two individuals slumped on the bench, he must have touched that particular substance, and so the police detective is now also in a hospital in intensive care. Because it's a substance that your skin, so it goes into your skin, right? So if you get in contact with it, so it's so
it's very, very viral. It's very, very viral then.
It is, and that's so dangerous. So the police officer at the time he must have just thought, who are these two people slumped on the bench? So he must have touched a particular part of them and got this substance on his skin, and unfortunately now he's in intense care. But really what it comes down to is again, Russia is a powerful, both an ally, and they can be also at times, depending on what the issue is can be aggressive as well. And
what is your let's talk about sort of the leadership in Russia and Putin particularly. What is your take on Putin as a leader, and also as a man, from your point of view, sitting where you are in Wembley, from what you know of the man himself? What is your overall thoughts on Vladimir Putin?
Vladimir Putin is a very intellectual. He's skilled in the martial arts. He's skilled in various. He's got so many skill sets; it's unbelievable. Because he used to be head of the KGB, which is the Russian spy agency, right? So he's over time has learned different skill sets on really how to manipulate, how to. So he's been a leader.
But what do you think sets him apart from all the other ex-Russian presidents? Because he's a different character altogether. So what do you think it is that separates him from?
Because he's got a military background, right? So he's come from a military background. So his way of thinking is it's Russia first, right? Russia, they've always wanted to, they are a superpower, and they will continue to be, because they have got a major influence around the world. And Putin is an aggressive president who really is showcasing what Russia is about. That again, they have got the means in order to really.
Have you actually ever observed Putin walking? It's a very interesting posture he uses. If you watch Putin very carefully, when most people walk, they walk and they let the arms flap as they're walking. Putin, if you watch Putin very carefully, he doesn't do that. When Putin walks, he allows his left arm to move up and down and to waver, but he keeps his right arm very, very close to the side. And a lot of people suspect it's because of his KGB KG, was it KGB? Used to be, whatever they're called.
He's
their training. So the reason he walks the way he walks is, if he was going to be attacked, he allows his right hand to be close to his side so that he can pull side on. This is the actual theory. So when you get a chance to watch Putin in public and he's walking, watch him very, very carefully. You'll see his left arm is always flapping, but his right arm never leaves his side.
You know,
now you know why.
And again, you know, Russia they've got natural resources, and so gas and oil is huge in that country, right? So and then the gas pipes, across Europe, across Central Asia. Some of the pipes go through Asia and that forth. And so, you know, Russia has got this hold on various natural resources that other countries are not able to produce their own.
That's
but
right.
They're able to influence politically, how they want their how they want their foot within that country. And they've got these little, they have to turn a little dial on the gas.
That's
and
right.
They can be like, okay, I don't like this particular, and they can really slow down the gas output for that country. So they've done it to neighboring countries around Russia, and they've influenced and that's why these neighboring countries, are put into place, because they survive on gas, right? They need that.
Well, I read a report that Russia supplies, I think, around about 65% of natural gas to mainland Europe. So yes, you're absolutely right that they have a lot of natural resources. But there's also what we call tar sands, or oil trapped in sand. They have a lot of that, which is not like your traditional crude oil. In terms of processing tar sand or shell sand, it takes a lot to refine it, to extract the oil from the actual sand itself. But again, we're talking about the largest country on the planet, hugely influential politically, as KP mentioned, because of the natural resources. Now, going back to Great Britain, it seems that this unspoken war of words really started when 10, 15 years ago, Emily, I'm really bad with this guy's name, Lithuenko, was the previous spy that was poisoned.
Oh, right.
And of course he died. Horrendously, he lost all his hair. You can see that the guy was really, really sick. But since that particular incident, it seems that Great Britain and Russia have had this unspoken war. And I'm not sure if you're aware, KP, but there has been incidences even recently where Russian military jets have flown very, very close to the United Kingdom's airspace. And so what's happened is we've had to deploy the RAF to warn them off. So there's obviously a lot of posturing that's obviously taking place at the moment. But really and truly, we can attribute this type of situation when Tony Blair and George W. Bush were in power. Now, if you remember, NATO was using the Eastern Bloc countries to, in effect, surround Russia. And Russia didn't like that. And if you remember back in 2007, 2008 possibly, Russia entered Georgia. Do you remember that time? It would have been around the same time as the Chinese Olympics.
Yeah.
Where literally Russia entered Georgia. Georgia is a very small nation. But again, I think it was a response because at the time, and even now, you could argue that the United States, they basically own NATO. And what is NATO? Effectively, it's a world army. But the US is hugely influential. And again, when Russia entered Georgia, it was a response because Georgia was very critical of Putin's government. And we saw the same thing again in Ukraine as well. So I suspect, and I don't have any type of evidence, but I suspect that Russia really wants to take back control of all the Eastern Bloc countries that it lost during 1991, during the breakup of the Soviet Union. I mean, would you agree with what I'm saying there? Possibly?
Yeah, yes,
Yep.
I totally agree what you're saying there in terms of, Russia being very aggressive to cut in the neighboring European countries. So, like
Sure.
I say with Ukraine, right? It
Mm.
was crazy how they annexed, part of Ukraine.
Yeah, Crimea.
Part of Ukraine, and it was Crimea, right? And literally on the map, they just annexed it, right?
Yeah.
They had votes, so they had a vote for the locals, and majority of the locals that lived in that area were Russian, right? So and the Russian population within that country, Ukraine, well, a part of in Crimea, they had an election that wasn't really official, right?
Right.
Ukraine, it wasn't legality of that vote. It was literally unlegal. And what they did is they got all these Russians to say that they are for having Russia to govern
Right.
and really take over that part of the country. And so now they've just literally annexed. Yeah, they just got a next part of Ukraine because it used to be a part of Ukraine, and now it's a part of Russia. And what happened in that episode has really given between the EU, the European countries. Yeah, they're really worried, about Russia's aggression. Yeah, to Russia's aggression to how they're going about with these neighboring countries next to them. And I also wanted to add that with Russia, they announced, I think a few weeks ago, that they have got a new set of military equipment, right? New ships, new jets, right? And they're able to not to be targeted by radar, right?
So stealth jets, basically.
Yeah, so they will be in stealth mode, and they're able. So the US or the EU or any other military country were able to target, were able to detect them going over their airspace, right? And they because Russia spends I don't know the GDP, but it's very high that they spend on defense. Yeah,
but it's not going to be as high as the United States. The United States is the biggest spender on its military. Although under Barack Obama, he actually cut the spending in half, which pissed off a lot of Americans. But actually, if you look at the polls, of course, the United States spends the most on its military, and it has to, if it's to gain dominance as the world's leading superpower. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, the United States of America is Rome. It's a Roman Empire, right? So for it to keep control and be the policeman of the world, then of course it has to. Now, here's the thing, KP. I don't think Russia under Putin wants any type of trouble or issue. In my opinion, Putin doesn't want to go to war with the West. I don't see it. Why do I say this? Because since whatever you think of Vladimir Putin, right, the economy has improved in Russia because of his leadership. the living, not the cost of living, but the living conditions have improved because of the way he's been able to negotiate with other countries. And unlike the majority of the world, Russia is one of those few countries that doesn't have the Roswell banking influence. So in other words, it's able to determine its own destiny. You know, I said in a few videos ago that when George W. Bush labeled the terrorist states as axis of evil, which were from Venezuela to Iraq to Iran to North Korea, Cuba, and some other countries. These were all countries that were not owing any money to the World Bank. He didn't mention Russia, but Russia doesn't owe. Russia does not owe any money to the World Bank. So it has its own freedom. It's not under the same stipulation. It's not being managed covertly by the powers that be that perhaps one could argue want to control the world. Let's move away from Russia. Let's go back into Europe a little bit closer to home, because again, our beloved Prime Minister, Theresa May, is completely tied. And really, she's in a very, very bad situation with this whole Brexit issue. She hasn't really garnered the support of her own cabinet, number one. And number two, look, the problem with the situation is either you're in a relationship with someone or you're not, but you can't be 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And what's happened is the Conservative cabinet has tried to play the game, and they're being called out on it. Again, you cannot say to Europe, we don't want to be part of you guys, but we want to have access to the same rights that other European countries. It doesn't make sense. Either you're in bed with Europe or the EU, or you're not. And I think Donald Trump has said this from a long time ago, that the way that he thought that we should manage, not as if it's his business, but he has a good point. Start to negotiate from zero and work your way up. In other words, what he was really saying is cut your ties with Europe and negotiate individually. The problem is that can take a bloody long time. But what is your sentiments on this backwards and forwards with EU and human rights, Brexit and free trade, and Tusk? I mean, where is this going? Are we going to leave Europe or not?
Well, Saul, that's a very difficult question, right? Now, as you said, Donald Tusk, the EU Council president, he's been working with Theresa May and trying to come to a draft. So the EU came up with a draft,
right,
and they for withdrawal of the UK from the EU, right? And within that draft of negotiations, there were really a lot of questions, like you say, around trade, security, like legality, the legal aspects. How will the courts work? And so really, it's a question that, like you say, the UK can't have. They can't be 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And what Theresa May wants to do is she wants to move away, from that aspect, right? Where free movement, right, for UK citizens and also EU citizens coming in and out of the various countries.
How do you rate Theresa May as a prime minister compared to Tony Blair, John Major, Margaret Thatcher? How do you rate her as a prime minister?
I think Theresa May, her presidency, her time she has started in a difficult position, you know.
Mm.
She knew when she took on, you know, as the prime minister, that
Mm.
this particular issue will be very difficult for her,
Mm.
as her reign as being the, you know, the prime minister, because not only does she have to, you know, keep the reins of her party, you know, in check,
Right.
she really has to prove to us that she's able to negotiate what the UK want. And she's finding it really hard because she's getting a lot of backbenchers who are against some of her principles on what she sees as a partnership with the EU.
Sure.
And so she's really fighting against these, you know, just in her cabinet, you know, there's some members of the cabinet who are unhappy on how
Mm.
the negotiations are going, you know, and also there are her backbenchers who are really, you know, unhappy with certain areas. And then
Mm.
Theresa May then has to show, you know, now where we are leaving Brexit, she has to now build relationships again with these all different countries, right? Because
Mm.
before we were under the EU with everything, like from, you know, from trade and security and so forth. So now she has to reach out to all these various countries and start new negotiations and entice them to invest in our wonderful country, you know. And I love the UK.
No, my point is this though. We we are part of the Commonwealth because of royalty. I think there's about 2 billion people under the 2.5 billion people under the Commonwealth banner. And so I argue, why do we really need Europe? Why do we need Europe? I understand we're talking about import-export tariffs and we don't want to be galvanized when we send stuff to other countries, and I get that. But at the same time, you know, we're part of another crowd, another tribe that I believe has more to offer than just the EU alone, which is the Commonwealth, which includes Australia, New Zealand, Canada, many nations around the world. Is it not a bigger market than the EU?
Well, the EU is a unification of all these EU countries, right? Working on the same basic
Right,
principles on
right.
negotiating with these various countries. And I
Mhm.
feel, you know, I feel that we should have stayed in the EU, right?
Okay.
We when I don't want to go too much in this, but when we were told, you know, when we were given these ridiculous figures, right, on how much money, you know,
Mm.
we'll lose, like, you know, how much money we're pumping into the EU in terms of health, in terms of security, in terms of, and we were given the wrong picture when you know, Brexit, when it in December 2000, well, it was in 2016,
That's
right,
right.
when we decided that we're going to leave. But the reasons why we left, we weren't given the bigger picture. We were given the picture that we are losing more than staying in the EU, and the main one was immigration, right?
Mm.
And you know what? Now that immigration and, you know, free, like, you know, free movement of people around the EU, right? And what that caused for us is, you know, seeing a rise of EU citizens coming in into various parts of the UK, and, you know, changing the landscape. But regardless of that, that is going to happen anywhere you go, right? So there's always a country that is going to let people in, and, you know, and regardless of where they're from. And I
Mhm.
felt personally that we will benefit more if we stay in the EU than we leave. I understand, right? You're saying that, you know, we've got more powers. We're taking our reins back from the EU because we were pretty, like, you know, we didn't have the strings to pull really tightly where what we wanted to do in terms of particular areas. But yes, in that sense, now we've got the reins back. But again, what are we losing out from that, right?
Right.
What are we going to lose out with now building relationship with these other countries? Yeah, is it going to be pre-EU? Like, do we have those particular agreements? What agreements? It's just going to take years. It's going to take years, like decades, to really build up the momentum and get this country back to in the investments to post EU, and post Brexit, So it's a really difficult question, and I personally think we should have stayed in the EU.
If you was a betting man, in the next 2 to 3 years, you would assume that this issue with Brexit will be finalised. If you was a betting man, would you say that we will, as a nation, successfully depart from Europe, or do you think that we're still going to be tied in this type of stalemate? What, or perhaps have not left? Out of the three choices, what does your intuition tell you?
Well, what that really tells me is the negotiations are not going to the way we want it to go, both on the EU side and the UK side. Theresa May has even said that she will do everything she can to get the best deal from the EU. But what happens if we don't make a deal with the EU? What will we do? Will we go to a World Trade Organization agreements? Following that particular rules, and or will we have a second what's it called referendum on regarding the EU?
Well, this is
being in the EU. So
this is what we saw with the Republic of Ireland. We saw that. It's horrible feedback. We saw that. Originally, the Republic of Ireland voted that they did not want to be part of the EU. This was back in, was it 2010? Between 2007 and 2010. My memory betrays me. And what happened was, money was moved and a lot of pressure was put on the economy of the Republic of Ireland. They were then given a second referendum, and you all know the story. The people voted that they wanted to join the EU. And unfortunately, since then, inflation has just been off the scale. I mean, for example, if you go to the Republic of Ireland now, if you're a smoker, bad times, because you're looking at about 15 euros for a pack of cigarettes. Yikes. And what we saw was people in the Republic of Ireland were hopping the border to Northern Ireland because they were getting a better deal. And we also saw that with Black Friday, even recently, where people in the Republic of Ireland hopped the border to Northern Ireland to do their shopping. So I'm not saying that it's going to be the same situation, but we've seen a slight pattern with nations that have resisted the bankers' urge for a United States of Europe, basically. And when a nation decides not to move in that direction, or rather disobey its quote-unquote masters, then the pressure is applied. Now, I also heard recently that George Soros, a super billionaire worth about 80 billion, moved 18 billion euros from his personal account to his trust fund, to his trust.
Right.
Let me say that again. 18 billion. He moved from his personal account to his trust fund. Wow. That's a lot of money to move around, and one has to suspect what is going on. Look, George Soros is a man that will use his wealth to manipulate economies. It's a known fact. He's actually said it, that he will make certain plays on the market to manipulate certain economies. And I guess if you're worth 80 billion, then you can do that. But I thought it was interesting that this report, I mean, it only came out a couple of days ago, and I'll have to find the source, and then when I find out, I'll put it in the description. But that's a lot of money to be moving around, and I think it's quite interesting. And I think the question I would pose to you is, what type of effects would that have on a particular nation state, like, for example, the United Kingdom, if you're betting against a certain market condition? Do you understand what I mean, KB?
Well, really, it's the uncertainty. The country, businesses don't know what is going to happen post-Brexit, what agreements they're going to have. So for example, the financial services industry in this country is huge. The GDP, I don't know exactly what the figures are, but the GDP is high, right? Now, the negotiations with the EU at the moment are not going well. And we're talking about going to free trade agreements, but Donald Tusk was talking about, but that didn't include financial services. So my question would be, there will be, because of there will be unstabilization of the economy, right? Because the investments into the country, because Theresa May now has to go to all these and start new agreements, like with hundreds of countries, right? She has to start agreements with the top developed countries. She has to make agreements with them. Then she has to. So there's going to be instability within the markets, within so employment's what's gonna happen to employment? Are people gonna then, are businesses gonna move some of their units over to European countries? Because there are a lot of organizations who have a global presence. So all of their European presence, they want their people to be in a EU presence, because then they get all the passport system and so forth, right? And also, how is it going to work in terms of movement for the UK to move around, other countries in the EU, and also it's going to be questions around the living expenses for for us normal families. Inflation, is inflation going to increase? Will we go back into austerity? Will we have to? Will the treasury? Will we have to take more? From the treasury. So again, it's all those questions, and it's just because we don't know answers on how the EU Brexit is going and so forth. We don't really know what is going to happen, and with that in question, everybody is just on tenterhooks on really thinking about what's going to happen.
Okay, very good, very good, very good. Moving away from sort of the politics and the economy right now, I want to move in a different direction. So the actor Gary Oldman, who is a recent Oscar winner for the film Churchill, who was recently nominated for an Oscar. His ex-wife has come out basically saying that he used to abuse her. He physically used to beat her. So this has been printed in the British press at the moment. His son has recently come out defending his father, saying that no such thing ever took place, according to his own memory. And basically, the son is saying that the mother is trying. I think the son's name is Gulliver, and the mother's trying to obviously slot the father, and I think the son's painting the mother as very, very bitter at the moment. So yeah, it's a very interesting story, because again we have a situation whereby high-level celebrities again are being attacked, be it through their own cause, directly or indirectly. KP, what is your thoughts on this situation? Have you heard about the situation with Gary Oldman?
And I don't think I have. No. I haven't heard the story about Gary. Yeah, no, sorry. This is
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It just seems sort of. It just seems to me that every week there is always a new sort of sensation coming out, whereby a celebrity has either done something very, very wrong, or is being accused of something that's illegal in some fashionable way.
Is it the guy who played Winston Churchill?
Gary Oldman, yes.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I did. I didn't get to read about the accusation that was made
Right.
of a harassment. But I did read like the headline, and in it was about him. This was in his previous, right?
Yeah, his ex-wife.
Recent, or this was like back when he in his early acting career, wasn't it? So
yeah, but since he's won the Oscar, which was only a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
His ex-wife has basically issued a statement saying that why should he be given an Oscar when basically, in a nutshell, allegedly he's a wife beater.
Oh, right. Okay.
Right. And then obviously the son's come out to defend him. But the thing is, I think in this day and age, I mean, with sort of social media and the way that social media is at the moment, anybody can say any type of bullshit, yeah? And people are very, very quick to jump on the bandwagon. Oh, he must have done it.
Yeah.
You know, he's a rapist, or he's a wife beater, or he's a pedophile. Because of social, and it might be the case. And I use my words very carefully, allegedly. But I think because of the influence that social media has around the world, and because of the access to information, because of the internet, we're kind of seeing a social media movement. And it's quite scary, because what happened to innocent until proven guilty? Do you know what I mean? And of course, when you look at cases such as Harvey Weinstein, I've got to be honest with you. I mean, yes, the guy is a filthy animal, but come on, girls, come on, ladies. You knew exactly, for the majority of you, I don't want to generalize, but you knew exactly what time it was when he invited you to his hotel room and asked you for a massage. You knew exactly what you were doing. You knew that you wanted to have that particular movie role, and you were willing to do anything to get that particular part in the film. And now when the chips are down, all of a sudden you decide to grow a conscience and say, well, actually, me too, he did this to me. Is it an epidemic that we're seeing, which is being fueled by social media, KP?
That's a very good question. Now, personally, my viewpoint on what's with this Me Too movement, it was tagged on Twitter, wasn't it? And then it just went mainstream, and so I agree. With the Weinstein movement that is going on, women are now coming out and really sexual harassment, and like I agree with you. Why are they coming out now when it happened like 30, 40 years ago with some actresses? They just jumping on the bandwagon now that they're coming out that that they were sexually harassed, and also it has to be case by case, right? So these women are allegedly accusing. I say the word allegedly, right? With some of the actresses, there are evidences with some actresses that it did happen. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying, why has it taken so long for these women to really come out and expose Harry Weinstein for who he is? Now, he was a person of influence, and I totally agree that he had that power where he could really get a lead act. There were men also who were sexually harassed and stuff, right? So these leading actresses and actors, in order to get the parts, Harvey Weinstein, they must have had to do something in order to get that position. And Harvey Weinstein, even though what he did, taking them to hotels and doing all sorts of horrendous acts on them and shit, but also don't forget about Kevin Spacey.
Listen, don't forget about Donald Trump. What did he say? He was caught saying it was acceptable to grab a woman's pussy. Did he or did he not say that? This is the president. He said it. This is the president of the United States who was caught with a member of the Bush family. I think it's the nephew of Bush. Caught, recorded on tape. This is before the primary election for the president of the United States. And he was caught saying it is acceptable to grab a woman's pussy. He said it. He said it. And he's the president of the United States. So this is my point of view.
I just wanted to finish before you.
Yeah, go for it.
About Kevin. I just wanted to finish off and say about Kevin Spacey.
Right.
So when Harvey Weinstein came out, right, then other actors were then, they came out. Well, male actors came out, right, and they say they were abused by Kevin Spacey. Now, allegedly, I don't know if I know there's cases going on, but again, these actors are now coming out, and being accused of it. And like you say, Gary Oldham, but that is different. That is abuse, right, to his wife. You were saying.
I remember about 10, 12 years ago that Hollywood. There's some bad echo. That Hollywood is cannibal town, and when you just mentioned sort of Harvey Weinstein and then Kevin Spacey, who by the way is a great actor.
Oh, he's and
allegedly misogynized a young man back in the day. Allegedly, it's interesting because the thought that came into my head was a tank of piranhas, and when they sense there's a weak fish, they just start to cannibalize that weak fish. And there's this feeding frenzy, almost like sharks when they smell blood in the water. They go into this feeding frenzy mode. It's interesting. But I think that the viewers need to also understand that consciousness of today wasn't where it was in the 60s and 70s. It was acceptable in those times to behave in a very underhanded way, to manipulate, motivate, to show your power over people in a very sexual way.
Right.
Now it's not tolerated. Right. Now you can't do that. Nowadays we're being scrutinized, we're being regulated. I mean, the thought police are out in force. But in the 60s and 70s and 80s, dude, it was nothing to drop a roofie into a chick's pill. She passes out and then you rape the shit out of her. That shit happened all the time. It happened all the time. Now, I'm not saying it's acceptable. I'm simply saying that this type of activity in mainstream Hollywood took place all the time. So when KB says, look, this happened 30, 40 years ago, why are they coming out now? There's two arguments to this point. One, well, a crime is a crime. It should be reported to prevent it happening. And just because it happened 30, 40 years ago, doesn't mean that the person should get away with it. Agreed.
Yeah, no.
But we also have to take into consideration that the times were different. Listen, back in the 80s, our parents were allowed to beat the shit out of us, but they can't do that nowadays. So what? The kids that were being brought up, absolutely smashed up by their mums and their dads, are they going to start filing lawsuits against their parents in 2018? Come on, man. Come on, man. So it's a good thing that this snowball has happened, because now we have to be aware as leaders and influencers in entertainment. There's a responsibility that you have to take now. You can't fuck around like you did back in the day, because if you do, you're going to go to jail, my friend, right? But also at the same time, it brings into perspective the way that the liberals are really hammering home a certain sense of, or a visceral way of thinking that isn't necessarily the correct way in terms of moving forward.
With me, right? Even the workforce, right? Even when you're even in the workforce, you've got cases of sexual harassment, right?
Right.
And like you say, back in the day, people weren't able to really, come out and say that they were sexually harassed. And like you say, that at the time, it was a different period of time, and you couldn't openly come out and say it happened and go, and accuse someone else. But now you can, right? And even in the workforce is still happening. People are really being sexually harassed.
I agree with you, KP, but also at the same time, there's also an epidemic. And look, not many people talk about this, but there's also an epidemic of females specifically that are accusing men of horrendous acts that are unfounded, that are untrue. Period. It never happened. Okay? And these men's reputations are being tarnished. Because if somebody accuses you of rape or some sort of sexual harassment, dude, whether you've done it or whether you haven't done it, that sticks to your reputation. And I believe that if somebody accuses you of something that is totally unfounded, that person should go to jail. Because,
sorry, go on, finish.
Because you are inciting an incident of some nature that didn't happen. Okay? And for whatever your motivations are, especially when it goes public, whether you're a celebrity or not, that stigma will tarnish and can destroy your reputation for life. So I think there needs to be tougher laws, because we're very quick to send pedophiles and rapists, and they should go to jail for whatever period of time, if not for life, right? But what about the people that are making up lies and that are being deceptive and have been found to be liars and deceivers that are not receiving any type of punishment? So you can't go both ways.
No, I agree. Now, when, say, for example, in the UK, right, if you're accused, of sexually harassing someone else, or, in any way, you are then putting your whole, you are then held accountable by the law enforcement agencies to correctly investigate and and really give, a picture on exactly on whether the accuser is really telling the truth or not, right? Now, Sol, I have to admit that the CPS in the UK, which is a Crown Prosecution Service, they fucking had to, they had case, there was a guy in university, right? He was only like 21, right, at the time. He was accused by a girl that he raped her.
Right.
But the Crown Prosecution Service at the time of the court case, right? The lawyer for the defendant of the accuser, right? They asked the CPS for records to show, of various times on whether this girl really. So they wanted a phone records of this particular girl, and they found that 26,000 texts were sent to him, right? But how the
26.
fuck didn't the CPS give that information to the lawyer at the time
Right,
when
right.
they were investigating? Because you know what it was? Because because resources are really being stretched, so right? Austerity in this country, and they are, we're losing our forces, police forces across the country.
Are you saying
That is putting the pressure on on
so the failure of the justice system? Hold on a second, because you've mentioned a very interesting thing here. So you're basically saying in a nutshell, if I can get this right, the failure of the justice system is in direct correlation to economics.
Well, no. What I'm saying is that the flaws in the investigation processes of the CPS
Yeah.
cause these particular cases where you've got guys who are accused. Imagine they're just for the next couple, about probably year or so it takes for it from the time of investigation to court case, right?
Right.
Imagine their mental health, right? Must have been crazy. They've been accused of something that they know that they're not guilty of. And what I'm saying, it's not economics or anything. It's just to do with, because what the CPS have now gone is they have to go back to every case that they're dealing with at the moment. Those are 200 or more cases, active cases still within the Crown Prosecution Service.
Can I just also
So you're telling me you got one agent, right, looking after these cases, but he hasn't even been trained properly how to really deal with those particular type of cases.
But KP, surely some common sense needs to also take place. If you're saying to me 26,000 text messages were sent to his phone, how much would it have really cost the British taxpayer for the CPS to get those files? It's a push of a button. It's all electronic, push of a button. How much is it going to cost him? Now, I just want to mention this. The basketball player, Kobe Bryant, was accused of rape of a 19-year-old white girl, correct?
Yeah.
The evidence was based on vaginal bruising and tears, right? Now, let's just think about this. So this white woman has said that Kobe Bryant allegedly raped her, right? Now, this is what I mean by common sense. Okay, Kobe Bryant, 6'7", black man. White woman, 19-year-old girl who's probably not experienced in sex. Now, let's just use the visual here. Hold on. Do you see what I'm saying? Come on, dude. It's a no-brainer. Right? So we have to use some type. It's very easy for us as human beings to jump on the bandwagon and have an opinion and say, well, he obviously did it, or she obviously did it, right? Because I don't want to discriminate, because I don't want the feminists to come and attack me. So look, it's very easy for us to jump on the bandwagon, but we have to use an air of common sense, right? Now, also, what I would like to say is we saw the same failure in the Michael Jackson case, where he was also tossed out of court, where he was allegedly accused of molestation of kids. My point is this: we will never really know. But the fact is, we weren't even there. So for innocent people that are relying on the justice system for it to do its job, just because you're innocent, it doesn't mean that justice will be served. Because even the justice system gets it wrong. And we see this all the time. I don't know how we can protect ourselves. I mean, talking about the college kids, the guy that was accused of rape with a college girl, but the dumbass. What happens when boys and girls get together? Yeah. They fuck. You know why? Because it's all part of the experience. It's all part. Raging hormones, raging estro, woo! It's all part of the experience. And I'm not saying that this doesn't take place, but an air of common sense. Capiche?
Exactly. Yeah, no, I completely agree where you're coming from in that sense that, we're putting our lives in the law enforcement's, in the system, and then we rely on them to do a fair investigation of the allegation, right? And if they're not doing their job correctly, how can you then, as a citizen of that country, then feel that the courts, get me wrong, the courts isn't a perfect system, right? Not perfect. There are unfortunately cases out there where people who are innocent have been proven guilty, right? And then they've been sentenced to go to prison for a length of time that unfortunately, was not of their own accord. It was, it was the legal stature of the country on how they went about, proving him guilty or innocent, right? But what I just wanted to say is that I was really it was really upset to hear that this particular case with this guy who, he's just doing his university, going.
He's just a regular dude.
He's
He's in the place of studying.
Yeah.
Inevitably going to meet members of the opposite sex. He's a young man, raging hormones, being to go to countless house parties or going out. Men and women, boys and girls, they're going to interact, and a lot of these kids are going to have sex. It's just
they are.
It's the way it is. It's the way it is.
But do you know what? But again, now I think hopefully the commissioner of Scotland Yard has said, or was it one of their people really came out and said that, look, from what came out from this particular case, they have to look case by case now, and they have to really look at the stretch of the police force, on how much they're stretched at the moment.
Right.
And so, there's forces out there that we don't know about. The budget. The budgets that these police forces have, right? And so we don't know, how much forces in particular units within the police force are, understaffed or overstaffed.
Agreed.
So it's a balancing act as well. So again, I just wanted to say that it's not a perfect world,
no,
but I believe in our justice system. It's by all means not perfect, and I so don't want to. So I'm yeah.
Oh no!
Just do not even try, even touch a woman. Don't even.
But you know what it is, like, KP. Just before we end the show, I just want to also make this point as well, that everybody has secrets. We all do things that we wish that we could take back. In fact, there's some secrets that we wish that God or the universe didn't even know about. But it is what it is. But unfortunately, we live in a day and age where cameras are everywhere. People want to jump on the bandwagon. They've got access to social media. And, a classic example was with Amir Khan recently, where he accused his wife of sleeping with the boxer Anthony Joshua. Oh. If you don't know who Amir Khan is a British boxer, originally from Yorkshire. He's married to a beautiful young lady of Pakistani origins. Her name is something Macadam. And basically, they had a Twitter war fairly recently where he accused her of sleeping around, and in particular with Anthony Joshua, who is the British heavyweight champion of the world. Okay, and effectively, that whole spat that was aired out on social media, specifically Twitter, could have really tarnished and damaged Anthony Joshua's reputation. And the guy's completely innocent, completely innocent. But because of a warring couple who are oblivious, they throw out a name. And again, so we have to be very, very careful of the types of moves that we make. We have to be respectful of one another, and on that basis, I'm going to say this: stay safe, take care of yourself and each other. Take care.
All right. See you later, everyone. Take care.
Peace.
See you later.